class. I was like, hey, see you every time.
Yeah, I have 10:30. I just have a couple of questions before we start though. I want to know what you guys think about exam one. Was it okay? Any feedback?
I thought it was really rough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was rough about it?
I think it was just a lot to do in the time. Like I was getting to the end and I had like 10 minutes and I knew I wasn't going to be able to read through the code.
Okay, so
Felt like kind of like a fastball. So the stuff that I put on my paper, the test didn't fully encapsulate it. So I went back to the concepts, like magnetic disk, different forms of memory storage, and then that just didn't reappear. That's kind of like,
I told you it was like the homework.
that was what I,
Homework doesn't ask you. That's the reading.
The homework is the one that he made us do and submit on Gradescope.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a hard part.
I think it was just long because of that. After being too long.
Yeah, I spent probably only 20 minutes on the second part. And I spent most of my time on chapter one.
Anything else besides too long? Like the questions themselves. They weren't surprising, right?
I thought it was fine.
It was mainly just too long.
They were challenging.
I think it would have helped if I guessed I knew what to expect going into it. I feel like a study guide would help a lot.
So,
yes,
Yes.
yes.
So beyond just homework.
Yeah, more
Yeah.
practice would have been nice because I thought I could have gotten the whole thing given like triple the time. But like during that amount of time, I felt like really crunched. So I felt like I was making stupid mistakes and having to go back and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah,
Okay,
publisher.
so I have lecture slides and then homework. And then 2 days of review, and then you guys want to do it on your own with the study guide?
Yeah, like extra
Yes.
practice problems would
Study
have
guide.
been nice. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll release extra practice problems for the next one. And I'll just assign it as optional. You can do it if you want. But I just don't want to assign too much and like make it required.
Mhm.
And I do think it was a little too long, based on the amount of people just turning it in at the very end. So I haven't graded it yet because we do still have a lot of people that need to take the exam. Like normally I would have liked to give it back to you guys already. And I could also evaluate, like, so the exam is out of 60 points. And since there's not a whole lot of time, I could evaluate, like, does it make sense to make it out of 50 or something like that? So I haven't done that yet. But the next exam, I'll try and make it. Okay. So that's the exam stuff. I still have to figure out how to give the exam to everyone else. If you have questions.
Oh, is there a poll everywhere today?
Yes.
Okay, where's the code?
Oh, sorry. I'll put it up when it comes up.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But any other questions? Before we start? Okay. So we left off on Friday. We actually got through this slide, but this slide is still a good review for you guys. So this is our collection of 1-bit ALUs, and we're connecting 32 of them together to create the 32-bit ALU. And this kind of just makes one larger logic component out of 32 smaller components. And in our inputs, we have A as our first operand, B as our second operand, and less is for when we're using the set less than command. And we have these control lines. So B invert. What is B invert for?
Subtraction.
So B invert is used for subtraction because in order to implement subtraction, we're using our adders. And we're just gonna flip all of the bits of the second input, which is B, because our subtraction is defined as A minus B. And then we have the carry in to add 1 to finish the flipping of the sign of B. You not only need to invert it, but you also need to add 1 to it for 2's complement. And an operation, what does it do?
The addition.
Operation tells you
Which operation is gonna take
Yeah.
place?
which operation is it gonna be and, is it gonna be, so bitwise and between A and B, bitwise or between A and B, XOR. So your operations are gonna be defined, and this will tell you which one is going to be fed to the output. But all of the operations do get performed in the hardware. This just gets input into the mux at the end to select which operation is at the output. And we output the result and some other signals like overflow. So like if we're adding A and B and we have overflow, we may want to indicate to the hardware that, hey, there was overflow. Maybe you should have an exception or something. So the code is 195. I haven't activated it yet. So the last thing that we want to add to this ALU is supporting branch instructions. So how do you think we would support branch instruction? Like for set less than, we use the same subtraction hardware and just check the sign of it to see if one register was less than the other. What do you think we can reuse for our branch instruction?
We use the subtraction.
We can still reuse the subtractor. What would we check?
If it's
If the result is like equal to 0, then they're equal.
So because our branch instruction, we're doing branch on equal, we're checking if 2 registers are the same. So if we subtract them from each other and we get 0, then that means they're the same number. So we can still, again, reuse hardware. So branch on equal. If T1 is equal to T2, we're going to go to the label. So we determine if T1 is equal to T2 by just subtracting them. And if your result is 0, then you're going to jump to the branch. And this is how we're going to detect if it is 0. So the result is 0 when all of the bits are 0. And then how can we determine if the result is 0? How do we determine if all of the bits are 0? What gate would we use? Use 0.
And gate.
Or invert the OR gate. Same thing. Because if you do bubble pushing, you push the invert, then basically this would become an AND gate. You have inverters all over here. So now we have a 0 detection. And do note that our flag 0 is actually 1 when the result is 0. And then we can also merge our binary invert and carry in signals to be just the same signal. And why would we do that? When is binary invert going to be different than carry in?
Never.
It's just to tell you that it's a subtraction operation. So to simplify our circuit, we can make them the same signal. So here's another review question, kind of. But I just added it because it's been a few days since we've seen it. So we'd like to implement subtraction, so A minus B. So with only minor changes to our hardware. So here are our options on what we can do to change our hardware. We can provide an option to use not A, provide an option to use not B, provide an option to use A XOR B, or provide an option to use 0 instead of the first carry in, provide an option to use 1 instead of the first carry in. So these are the different combinations of options that we want to do to implement this subtraction. So we do 1 alone, both 1 and 2, 3 and 4, or 2 and 5. So do answer this on your own first. And the poll is activated. Yeah, I see people responding. Again, the code is 195. I think most people have answered. Anyone still working on this? So I think this was a good review. A large portion of you are getting it right, but there's enough people that I would like to go over this, but not enough where it would warrant you guys having your own discussion. So let's go over these options. So A is 1 alone. So we want to provide an option to use the invert of A. So if we invert A and we perform addition, it's not clear what's that. It's not mapping to subtraction. Because if we needed to invert the sign of A, we would have to also add 1 to A. And then both 1 and 2. So you're inverting both A and B. This would probably be good if you wanted to implement something like I want to bitwise and my inputs, but also invert them first. But you're trying to implement subtraction, so we need to flip the sign, and this is not flipping the sign of either of them. So 3 and 4. So A XOR B. So that's just going to give you an XOR operation first. Provide an option to use 0 instead of the first carry-in. That's not going to give you anything for subtraction. So let's look at D. So we want to provide an option to use bitwise, not B. So that's going to flip B. And then provide an option to use 1 instead of the first carry-in. And we're going to use the carry-in in our adder. And that's going to add 1 to B. That's going to flip our sign of B, give us A minus B. Because we want A minus B. If you did 1 and 5, you would get negative A plus B. So because we want A minus B, we have B. So we're going to move on to kind of asking more questions about the control signals here. So this signal that we've been working with, this is the 1-bit version. What signals accomplish add? Do I need binary invert 1, CN 0, and operation 2? Or we have more rows here? So we answer individually first. Yeah, I think everyone has submitted an answer. Still moving. But there are kind of 2 popular answers. So I think this one would be good for you guys to talk to each other, work out through peer instruction. If you guys can converge to one answer and resubmit the poll.
Well, we know, like, so I was thinking we shouldn't be inverting, right? Right, so off the bat, we know. What I say? The only thing I'll confirm is if we have like.
Well, you have the email.
I just want
With,
I think.
yeah. Yeah, because we don't want to add to it.
Right.
What is, I don't even understand what I'm looking at.
I know it's a I think that's for subtraction though, right?
Yeah, if you were inverting, that would be.
Oh.
I think it's definitely not a. Yeah. Same, I think it's either one.
Ready. Yes.
Fine, what does that even mean?
The answer is one.
B is for, you know, your inverse.
That's what it is. If you look at the left.
It's one, it's gonna invert.
So two is connected to one back.
You're not, you don't wanna get. You said. Variable on that add, so. if you invert or what we're doing.
Right, no. I forgot that we're adding.
Yeah, I think it has to be either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carrying, flip it, so it's just right here.
Okay, do change your answer if you were convinced to change.
Why does A have a tab?
Okay, so there was some movement in the flow. So let's go over this one at a time. So A, B invert of one, Cn of zero, and operation two. For all of our answers except for none of the above, we want operation of two. So let's just look at operation two first. The operation is our selector for this mux, and it's going to determine which operation we're doing. So 0 is bitwise AND, 1 is bitwise OR, 2 we're using this adder block. So 2 looks promising. So maybe none of the above, keep it in a feedback, but maybe that's not right. And then Cn, so Cn is the carry in to this adder. So we want to just add A and B. We don't want to add A and B and 1. So we want Cn to be 0.
Wait, just a quick question, what happens if CM will be one?
You get, rather than the result being A plus B, you get A plus B plus 1.
Okay.
Because Cn is only coming into this first one. It's like a third operand. And the other Cn's are just your ripple carry adders. You want Cn to be 0. And then binary invert. So binary invert is going into this mux. And if it's 0, we keep B as it is. If it's 1, we're inverting B and flipping all of its bits. So we want to keep B the same. So binary invert should be 0 as well. So we like D here. So what about accomplishing an OR? What signals to give you OR? So again, do this on your own first. Get the signals. Okay.
B.
I think most people have answered this. And I think based on the poll, we don't really need to go over this with peer instruction. Because a lot of you are answering the correct answer. So let's just go over this. So I'm gonna again start with operations. Operations are basically either 0 or 1 in our options. So we do have none of the above. So operation, if it's 0, we're taking the inputs A and B and we're adding them together. So that's not giving us a 4. But if operation is 1, we have A and B going into this OR gate. So we want operation to be 1. And then Cn, it's going into this adder. Our operation we know is going to be 1. We don't really care what Cn is. It can be 0 or 1. Doesn't matter. It's not going to affect the output of our OR gate. But binary invert. So binary invert is like this intermediate gate between B and our OR gate, so it could affect our results. We could be getting either A or B, or A or not B. So we want B, so we want binary invert to be 0, because if it's 0, B just passes through. But if it's 1, B gets inverted. So we want binary invert be 0. We don't care what Cn is, so we want operation B1. We like B. So the next one is the last question. And it's, what are your signals that you want to accomplish subtract? We want to subtract A minus B. Is anyone else still working on this? I think one person. We'll wait another 30 seconds. So based on the poll again, you guys get to know your stuff. So we can go, I'm gonna use the same like operation. So we're gonna start with operation. They're all 2. We want A minus B. And again, 2 is using the output of the adder. And we know that for addition or subtraction, we're going to utilize the adder. So we like operation code of 2. And then we want A minus B. So we need the Cn to add 1 after we invert B. The Cn can't be 0 because we need to add 1 for our 2's complement representation. And then B invert, when it's 0, again, B just passes through. But when it's 1, B gets flipped. So we need to flip B, flip the sign. So we need the 1. So we like C. We need a binary invert, the B invert, or flipping all of the bits of B, Cn to add 1 to it. And that makes B become negative B. And then A plus negative B is essentially A minus B. So like. So here's another example of an AOU. I think we can move on from this because we spent a lot of time with the other one. If you have questions on this, you can ask me on Piazza or at office hours, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to conclude this with we can build an AOU to support the MIPS instruction set. So we went over a few of those operations. So like we did binary, bitwise and, bitwise or. We added support for set less than, branching, addition and subtraction. So you can build your AOU to support all of those operations. And we do that by just using the multiplexer to select what output we want. And we efficiently perform subtraction by reusing our adder and using 2's complement. And we just take the 1-bit ALU and then connect all of our ALUs together to make the 32-bit ALU. And it's here some important notes. So when we create a new operation, add it before the MUX, all of the gates are always working. So it's not like just because I select add, the logic isn't running through the and the or. And the speed of the gate is affected by the number of inputs into the gate. So if we have a 32 input AND gate rather than 32 2 input AND gates, then your speed is going to be affected. So that's why we kind of make this 1-bit ALU and connect them all. And it's just running in parallel. And then the speed of the circuit is also affected by the number of gates in series. So the more gates that your signal has to pass through before it gets to the output, the longer it's going to take for it to get to the end. And that's going to affect your clock rate. Because the longest path for the deepest level of logic is going to determine how long it's going to take for that logic to pass through. And that's going to determine your clock rate. So even if you have some really short paths, but you have one super long path, that long path is your critical path, and it's going to determine what your clock rate is. So any questions before I go into the next things? There's 2 more items that we have to take care of today. One is I just want to tell you guys about the research project that I promised at the beginning. And the second thing is I want you guys to fill out a mid-semester survey to tell me things that you like about the course, that you want to keep happening, things that you don't like about the course, that you want to change. Give me suggestions on what you want to see change. Like we talked about at the beginning, you want the study guide and you want the test to be a little short. So any questions before that?
Did you say research?
Yes,
Okay, I think I might have missed that.
Yeah.
You said
I'll
you-
go over it.
Okay.
But you have plenty of time. Okay. So, as promised, research presentation. You are going to work in groups to give a platform. There. So you're going to work in groups. There's 40 of you guys. We have 3 days of presentations, about 15 minutes per presentation. So it should be around 4 people per group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a list of papers to start with. So 40 of you guys, 4 people per group about. I'm going to create a list of 15 papers. So there will be some papers that won't be covered, but you guys can choose which ones you want to cover. And it will be ranked choice voting. So you'll select your top 3, give 1, 2, and 3, and I'll implement an algorithm to maximize happiness between the groups. So you may not get your first choice, but you'll probably likely get your second choice at least. And I'll put out a spreadsheet with the papers and where you can fill in your choices. And you'll be able to see the choices of other groups. So if you want to guarantee your choice, like maybe it's your second choice, but you already see that people have filled it out as their first choice. Maybe you want to choose something else as your first choice. So there is some sense of first come, first serve as well. But I encourage you guys to just look at it sooner than later. But I will be trying to maximize happiness with choices on the spreadsheet. And basically, what will happen is you're going to read the original paper that I put there for you, but you're going to use that as a starting point and find a very similar paper, and you're going to present that to the class. And that's going to happen on the last week, so week 15. Yes, Andrew.
2 things.
Yes.
1, related. Will this serve as our final?
You don't really have a final. Your at least the exam that is at the final exam time is not cumulative.
It's like exam number 3.
Yeah, exam 3. So you're going to have exam 3 at the final time. And I'll give you guys the full 2 hours, but I'm going to try and design the test for a 1-hour period.
Second thing, slightly less related. When you get all the test scores back for exam 1, are you going to be considering a curve?
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning. So,
Sorry.
so based on the score, I like to see an average score of around B+. Well, it will be curved accordingly, is what I will say, okay? But that's what I try to aim for.
So to summarize the research presentation, you're giving us 15 pages or 15 research documents, and we select which 3 would be our favorite to work on.
Yes.
Based on your algorithm.
Yeah, and then I'll set a deadline to do that. And then afterwards, I'll send out the final list of this is the paper that you're gonna read for sure.
Okay.
But the first thing to do is find a group of 4 people.
So we have to find a view.
Yeah, sure. So you are gonna be working in groups. You can pick your own groups. There's many ways to find people to join your group. I'd probably try and find people that have similar schedules to yourself. So that's easier to work together, but you can use Piazza. Piazza has a team finding function. I'd recommend that.
The spreadsheet, is that gonna be on Canvas or is that gonna be on Piazza or are you just?
I'm gonna post a link on Piazza
No.
and it will be on OneDrive. So your presentation is gonna be about 15 minutes. Any other questions on this?
So then, do you just choose the topic you want and then like you get a group of?
You get your group first, your group decide.
Gotcha.
Or I can do it like where you guys choose and then I assign the groups if you want. But I think you guys would probably prefer picking your groups.
I thought you asked us to select our favorite papers for research.
Yeah, so as a group, as your group of 4, select your top 3.
Those are the individual ones. Yeah.
All right, so we have about 13 minutes left. I posted a link on Piazza. The survey. This survey, it's going to ask you to sign in, but it does not collect your email. The only reason it asks you to sign in is so that it limits responses to one per person. I do not see your email, so this survey is completely anonymous. You write whatever you want into it. And can you guys see it?
Yes.
So it's gonna ask you, what are 3 things that you think work well and would like to keep the same? So like, do you like the peer instruction? Is the reading before class okay? Things like that. And then what are 3 things that you don't think work well and should change? And then regarding those 3 things that you want to see change, how do you want to see it change? Like, maybe you think that you don't like the peer instruction, or you don't want the reading beforehand. You just want it to be like do weekly or something. You would suggest that here. And then any other comments you can put here. And it does say 3 things. I would like to see 3 things. If you have more than 3 things, that's even better. But I would just like to see 3 things.
What's the peer instruction?
So peer instruction is, I first ask you guys to answer the questions individually,
Oh, okay,
and then you talk to each other.
okay.
That's peer instruction. So I would just like to use the last 11 minutes of class for you guys to fill out this survey.